Welcome to Art Ed Radio, the podcast for art teachers. This show is produced by the Art of Education, and I'm your host, Tim Bogatz. I don't care. Those three words can easily cause the most experienced of teachers to become so frustrated. Apathy can be the most difficult thing for a teacher to deal with, and it seems like it's happening to younger and younger kids every single year. Okay, but when we ask that question, do you let those apathetic kids fail? The answer needs to be no. Now, I'll be honest, you're not going to reach every kid. You just can't. But you can get through to a majority of your kids, and you can help them find at least a little bit of success and hopefully get out of that apathetic mindset. Okay, so the question is then, how do we reach students who give off the vibe that nothing matters? Now, first of all, I think we need to come to an understanding. Okay, we all know that it's never as simple as students just quote unquote don't care. And we need to remember that. There are some students that are afraid to fail. There are some students that have issues with home lives, that are dealing with peer pressure. And as much as I hate to say this, in a lot of educational environments, students have realized that they can get by without working hard. When it comes down to it, there are hundreds of reasons why students don't try in school. It could be anything. And that's part of the reason that, teachers have such a tough time dealing with apathy. And so what do we need to do? Like, how do we make a connection to our kids that's going to help them find some success? And that's our challenge for us as teachers, to connect our kids' interests and their lives to what we are doing in our classes. They need to know that we care about what we are teaching, and more importantly, they need to know that we care about them. Because so many other classes throughout the school day are just watch this video, do this worksheet, read these pages. And you can't make a connection there. Like, there isn't a lot for kids to get excited about when they're dealing with a canned curriculum in 5 or 6 of their classes. And that's going to lead to naturally just a lot of apathy. Okay? But we can do something different in the art room. Like, we have the subject matter that can engage our kids, get them working, talking, collaborating, get them excited about learning. Okay? We have to have our passion, and we have to find ways to deliver that passion and give it to our students as well. Because once kids are passionate, they can start to work. Okay? But it's not just about doing the work. Like, we need to show them how to do the work that we're expecting. Okay? You hear all the time about having high expectations and holding kids to standards. And, eventually kids are going to work to meet those expectations. And that's true. But what gets overlooked far too often is that you're probably going to have to show them the way. Okay? You need to have high standards, but you can't just have high standards. You need to go back and meet kids where they are. Like, I hear teachers all the time talking about, I gave sketchbook assignments to my kids and they never do them. They don't know how to work in their sketchbooks. Okay? They don't care. They don't want to do it. Okay? But think about it this way. Have you taught them how to work in their sketchbooks? Like, kids need direction. They need guidance. If you want to get them to this place of high expectations, you need to show them the path. You need to work with them on the way to get there. Okay? And the way we do that is through making those connections. Okay? We create amazing lessons. We expect good work, and we get good work out of our kids. Okay? And that's how we're going to solve this problem of apathy. Okay, but it comes down to this, like, as much as we care about our kids, okay, we can't do everything for them. We don't want or need that burden and that responsibility as teachers of having to do everything for our kids. Okay, but we can meet them where they are. We always do these sorts of things with one eye on the fact that we know that, unfortunately, there's a good chance that the blame is going to fall to us, the teachers, when the kids fail. It's not just about us. We need our kids to do that work along with them, and we need to show them how to do that. hey, we can start them on their way to finding some modicum of success there. Because when we connect and when we tap into that passion, hey, hopefully we can get kids out of that rut of apathetic behavior and onto something bigger and better. There's a lot of ways to do that, and I want to bring on Andrew right now to talk about some of our best strategies. All right, I am here with Mr. Andrew McCormick. Andrew, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing good, man. It's good to be on.
All right, it's good to have you. And we got a big discussion tonight about apathy, and we'll dive right in. I talked in the intro a little bit about how there are teachers who don't do a lot to get kids excited about learning, but even if you do, like no matter how good you are as a teacher, you're still going to have those apathetic students, which to me kind of shows that the problem goes way beyond the scope of what we can do in the classroom. So I'm going to ask this of you, like, what do you think breeds this type of apathy? Like, is it caused by something in school, something with parenting, something with society, or maybe all of the above?
Yeah, I think it's probably option D, all of the above. I mean, I think it's probably a multiple reasons that kind of the kids have gotten to that point. And, I do have to kind of take exception to what you said about how it's maybe more than what we can do in the classroom. I think it's a lot to try to undo that when you think about what are the root causes of these things. But I do think that good art teachers are still going to give it like the best effort that they can to try to do or undo some of that stuff. So while it may not be something that was like in the official job description, which is like to get kids to give a crap again about anything, I do think that the good art teachers out there are really going to try to get to the bottom of it and try to like rekindle that fire and get them to care about stuff again.
Yeah, I think that's good. And, we can dive into that a little bit too. But I want to ask you to something, I don't know, just that we've talked about before. And let me kind of break this down into two parts. Like, you've talked a lot before about how you really hate the traditional school day, like 8 classes, 45 minutes each, moving from bell to bell. Like, first part, like, do you think that's part of the problem? Like, does that routine create that sort of apathy? And second part, do you think that like a different schedule or a different approach to teaching could help kids break out of that monotony and explore some new ideas, new interests, and maybe find that joy or that passion that's missing from so many different kids?
Yeah, I think that's, the game of school, the 43 minutes, the 28 kids per class, the bells and we do it on A day, B day to be opposite PE. I mean, there's so many sort of like structural, practical sides to school that I just really think it's like, it takes all this sort of like spontaneity and creativity and fun out of learning so that by the time like, I'm middle school, you're high school, by the time you get a kid in 7th grade, 8th grade, like, they're pretty jaded to the way the whole system works. And a lot of kids kind of know how like the game works. And I definitely think that that's a part of it. Now, I've been joking a lot with my students lately that, one of these days I'm going to win the lottery and I'm not going to retire, but I'm going to build a school where all you had to do was take classes that you wanted to take. And then it would be the job of the teachers to teach certain core competencies in all of these classes. Cause I think that's what kids want. They want to feel like they have some choice, they have some freedom, they have some autonomy to kind of do the things that interest them.
Yes.
And rarely do I think that kids are ever asked, like, what are you really interested in? And even when they are asked by adults, I kind of think that they know they're supposed to say the things that the adults want to hear. Like, I'm interested in math and science and I'm interested in, it's like, there's not kids. I mean, there's some, but most kids are like into like snowboarding and video games and like football. And so I don't know. I mean, if you give kids some choice and some autonomy during the day, I think that's a really good way to kind of rekindle their connection with learning.
Yeah, I think that's good. And yeah, let's talk more about that actually, because you mentioned some of the things we can do and some things we should be doing. And I think we do kind of need to look at it pragmatically because, we're not winning the lottery anytime soon. We're not, revamping the school system. But, if we dive into it, like, what can we do to kind of bring kids' interest into that? What can we do in the art room to create that sort of environment that fosters passion and joy and gets kids away from being apathetic?
Well, I'm a big advocate of choice, and on the choice spectrum, like wherever you lie, to give kids more freedom and autonomy to show you what they've learned, I think can be really, really helpful. And I can tell, I'm at a new gig this year that I think my students have kind of grown up with not a ton of choice, because when I've given them some freedom, and they'll ask me these questions like, Mr. McCormick, can I do it like this? Can I draw it this way? I'm like, yeah, you can do it that way. And they're totally shocked. And then I'm shocked that they're shocked. It's like, listen, I've given you this kind of idea and I've given you some parameters. Anything you can do creatively within that, if you're excited, I'm excited. Like, if you're excited to do it, then so am I. And I think that given that freedom, that choice can really ignite a lot of people. Now, I do think that there's a fallacy out there that, like, hey, if you've got apathetic, kids or kids that don't want to work hard, all you got to do is go tab or go choice.
Yes.
It's not that simple. It's not like a switch that you can just flip and then all of a sudden these kids who have been totally disinterested and unchallenged for like 9 years of schooling are all of a sudden going to like be making wonderful stuff. You've got to have some like baby steps, some scaffolding to kind of get them back into it. I always used to tell parents at parent teacher conferences, like, listen, part of my job as a middle school teacher, because I get kids and then I pass them on to the high school, is to get your son or daughter just as excited for school as they were back in kindergarten. And I think I've brought that up on a podcast before, but I really do think that that's part of my big job, is to like get them excited about learning again, because by the time I see them, they're so like too cool for school. They're just jaded,
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I want to dive in a little bit deeper with, one of the things you said there. So let me phrase it like this. Like, once you figure out where your kids are with their learning, with what they're excited about, with their interests, like, how do you translate that into getting them to put forth the effort they need? Like, do you have specific strategies? Like, once you get them, making choices and making work, like, how do you get them to, continue to be excited? Like, what are some of the strategies that you have that combat that type of apathy?
Well, I think this came up on a podcast a couple episodes ago, but there's this notion of like building competency and building confidence in student work. And I think that that's a big part of it. I've always believed like it's way more acceptable for kids to be like, kind of like a badass instead of a dumbass, pardon my French, but I really do believe that. Like, it's just, it's more cool and there's more cachet. So if you can, like, I just call my students out on that. I'm like, listen, I see your bluff. You say that you don't put forth effort because it's a defense mechanism, because you don't want to admit to the fact that like you're not very good at this. I see right through you. I wrote the book on that. Okay. So number one, let's start there, that I see through you. So let's start building those confidences. Let me show you some tips and tricks that you can actually make your drawing or your painting or your sculpture better. And then when they start to exhibit like, hey, like I finished this mug and it's not awful. And, hey, this is like way better than I thought I would ever do. I try to give them lots of praise and lots of very specific praise. Like, hey, I'm really proud of you for the fact that you did that whole painting without, complaining to me that you were no good at this thing. And I just try to really help them out. And I think that's one of the biggest things is like, for some weird reason, by the time kids get to middle school and high school, they're convinced that they're not good at art. And I always ask them like, well, wait, who told you that you were not good at art? I did. Okay. What do you know about anything? Nothing. Well, then don't listen to yourself. Listen to me. Art is teachable. If you put forth some effort, you're going to get better and better at it. And I'll even break it down like this. I'll just say, listen, like, it's really sexy to be like good at stuff. Like, no one wants to be like basic and boring and like uninterested in stuff. Like, if you want to have like cachet after high school and like be a cool, interesting person, you're going to have to get good at something. So you better put forth some effort now.
Yes, exactly. And There's a couple. Well, I mean, you have a lot of great things that you hit on there. I want to mention a couple of them. One of my big mottos in the art room, just for teaching, is to celebrate every success. And no matter how small it is, I'll say if 95% of that drawing that kid just did really sucks, we're gonna focus on that 5% that's really good, and you build on that, and you need to build the confidence of your kids and get them excited about what they're doing. And like you said, you need to kind of go meet kids where they are and be able to scaffold up from there. Because I'm going to try not to rant about this, but one thing that you always hear as a teacher is, you got to hold kids to a high standard, and they're going to work to meet it, which is great advice. And you and I both know that's always true, and it's going to lead to a lot of success. But too often, I think teachers make the mistake of assuming kids know how to meet that standard and how to do that work. And that's not always the case. And, their kids can't meet that standard right away. Teachers just throw their hands up and say, they just don't want to do the work. And the reason is, maybe the kid doesn't know how to do the work. Isn't there something to be said for figuring out what your kids know, what they can do, and then kind of differentiating your instruction so you can meet them where they are? And if you have a kid who's really struggling with stuff, how do you personally, how do you meet them where they are, and how do you get them raised up to where you want them to be? What are some strategies you have for that?
Well, I mean, my simple strategy is just tough love and calling it like I see it and being honest with them, and also saying listen, I'm not mad at you because I find your work ethic or your investment in this to be substandard. But I want to just make sure that we differentiate. I think what you're talking about with differentiating our expectations is kind of as a finished product. I have students in my classes who bust their butt and try super, super hard, and their drawings are just not that great. Okay, let's just be honest. They're starting with fewer cards in their hand, lower levels of prior talent. Okay, but they tried really, really hard. I'm totally fine with that kid. Great job, you did the best you can. I know you did. The kids that really make me, really invest a lot of time and energy in them is listen, you complain that you're not good at drawing, and then I see you waste easily 60% of your time in class, screwing around, not really working to get better at this. Yes. That is what I would consider to be apathy. And that's what I find pretty frustrating. But okay, so then what I try to talk about is I'll just tell them listen, this is not very good. I think you can do way better. And I always get the same reaction. Well, that's how I wanted it. I like it like this. I like it this way.
Yeah.
And it's okay, listen. Or they'll say, that's the best that I think I can do. This is quality work. And it's no. Listen, your definition of quality work and my definition of what I think quality work from you is, those are two totally different things. So let's talk about defining kind of that video reel that's playing in our head of what quality work looks like. And then I try to get very specific. You didn't shade this here. This is all sorts of messy. You didn't even pay attention to this. I talked about doing this. So I try to give them specifics, not just I think you're really lazy. I mean, that's a message that when they hear it is just well, forget you then, old man. I don't want to listen to you.
Yeah. And I think it's important to know that the words that you say to your kids have a lot of power. And if you're telling them, oh, this isn't good. Oh, you're not putting enough effort. Yeah, they're going to take that to heart and they're going to shut down. But again, if you're celebrating those successes and you're letting your kids hear over and over, you can do this. I believe in what you're doing. I appreciate that effort. They're going to start to believe it themselves, and you can really, change the mindset and change the attitude. So I think teachers really need to kind of be mindful of how we are talking to our kids. But I want to ask you just kind of one last question. And, again, I have a lot of thoughts, so this is probably going to take me a little while to get to. But when I first started teaching, I had that kind of savior mentality where every kid is going to become this passionate, lifelong learner, and I was going to do everything I could to reach them. Time after school, they're coming in making art, visiting counselor, phone calls home, the whole 9 yards. And let me tell you, like that burns you out really quickly if you're trying to do that for every kid. Okay. And then after I'm feeling a little burnout, like the pendulum starts to swing the other way. And I started getting into this really poisonous mindset of like, if my students don't care, why should I care? And, if they don't want to put forth, effort for me or for my class, I'm not going to put forth effort for them. Okay. And obviously that's not doing anybody any good either. So I guess my question for you is like, where should our mindset be? Like, how do we find that balance of doing what our kids need from us, but not doing too much? Like, how do we get kids to break free of their apathy without doing all of the work ourselves?
Well, I think I end up having like a lot of really meta conversations with my students where I let them in behind like sort of my ultimate game where it's like, listen, and I know I said this a couple weeks ago on a podcast. It's like, I don't really care if you ever get super good at shading with like chalk pastels. Like the end game is that you learn how to be passionate about something and you're just kind of practicing with chalk pastels. And, I think about it like this, like your students are not going to leave in 7th grade, 8th grade, 12th grade being fully cooked, amazing human beings, right? They're still going to be young adults. But if you can think about like, listen, I took the ball, I ran with it, I moved it forward a little bit, and I gave them as much as I could, and I filled them up with as many skill sets and demeanors and abilities as I could, and then I let them run with it next. Or maybe then it's the next teacher who gets to run with this kid who, all the skills that I filled them up with. That's kind of what I think it as. Like, I'm just kind of moving them forward. And as long as I can do that, then I'm feeling good. But I mean, that's kind of the analogy of like running with someone. It's not just like, I'm going to do this all on my own and, come hell or high water, we're going to get this done. You've got to do it with them. And that's why with some kids, I mean, like I've had students where it's like, okay, I can tell within one day of meeting them, they're going to be that special kid in my class that really requires a lot of work. But then they're a tough nut to crack, right? And it's like, and then you'll have others where it's like, okay, I got you figured out pretty quick. But those kids who are tough nuts to crack, it just takes time. Like I'm hearing things, 13, 14 weeks into the semester from kids where I'm like, oh, that explains a whole lot about why you're so resistant to this sort of prodding or this sort of cajoling. I get it now. That's why that wasn't working. And that just honestly takes a lot of time. And the unfortunate thing is sometimes as middle school and high school teachers, you get kids for like a semester, you finally start to unravel them and know what buttons to push. And it's like, all right, see you later. I hope you have a good life. But, yeah, it's funny. And one of the things that I've been doing a lot lately is I'll just sit down next to a kid, who's kind of got a lot of apathy and, maybe isn't working that hard. I'll just sit and draw with them for like a whole class period while still being attentive to everyone else. But you'll just hear things that they'll say when it's like, oh, okay, you're starting to like kind of let your defenses down. And I kind of get all of the years of like not being held accountable and not, being challenged and not being pushed and not being supported and being told this, that, and the other. I can see why you're apathetic and kind of checked out. And then you can start to unravel some of that stuff.
Yeah, I like that. I think investing time in your kids is really important. And, the more you can do that in class, the better to really get to know them. And like you said, figure out the right buttons to push, figure out what's really going to interest them. And like you said, work along with them. Like you can't do it for them, but you can do it with them. So I think that's a good place to close it out. And I think that's some really good advice. So thank you very much, Andrew. We'll go ahead and wrap it up there. And I appreciate you coming on.
Yep. My pleasure, man. As always. Talk to you later.
See ya. Bye. All right. A big thank you to Andrew for coming on and hashing out some of these ideas with me. And I have a lot more to say. Surprise, surprise. But before I do that, I want to talk to you a little bit about the Art Ed Now Winter Online Conference for art teachers. The Art of Ed puts on an amazing online conference a couple times a year. And I feel like a lot of the ideas that we're talking about tonight are actually hit on with some of the presentations that are going on at the conference. We're talking about student engagement and positive experiences and all of these great things that you can do in your classroom, new ideas to engage your students, to get them working, to get them excited about art. And so if you are looking for some strategies to help kids get away from that apathy, get away from that apathetic mindset, I would definitely suggest checking out the Art Ed Now conference. It'll be worthwhile for you. It will inspire you, and in turn, it will allow you to inspire your kids. So if you want to see what it's all about, check out all of the awesome presentations that are happening and see the price, then it is artednow.com. It is an amazing deal. It is affordable, and there are all sorts of incredible presentations that you are going to love. So check out artednow.com and see everything that's coming your way with that conference. It takes place on February 18th, and I think you're going to love it. So make some time to check it out. Now, we've talked a lot about what we need to do to break kids of apathy and how we can do it. Okay, but where do we start? Okay, I think the first thing is to recognize that you have a lot of power with your words, with your kids, in almost every interaction that you have with them. Okay? From the moment you first start talking to them, you're giving them an almost constant stream of feedback on themselves and, more importantly, their sense of what they're capable of. Because when they're hearing over and over, you can do this, and I believe in you, okay, and I know you can do this, okay, they're going to start to believe it themselves. Okay? We as teachers need to have that growth mindset, because kids are capable of so much more than they think they can do. And our job is to try and develop those capabilities. Also, we talked a couple times about standards, and we need to hold kids to those high standards and those high expectations, because you do believe it's possible for them to grow into those standards and to be able to meet those expectations. Kids start to believe they can do so much more than they originally thought possible. And when they find success, they start to change the way not only they see the world, but they start to change the way they see their own place in it. Because having someone in your life who holds you to high standards and holds you accountable, and most importantly, believes that you can achieve these things, is so critical. We as teachers can do that too. Okay, because holding a kid to those standards is actually saying to them, I know you can do more than you think you can. And with that type of attitude, you can start to break them out of that apathetic mindset, help them believe in themselves and believe in their capabilities. And that growth that you're looking for is going to begin to happen. Now, you may not see it immediately. It may not fully happen until long after you're done teaching them. Okay, but every step counts. Every step helps. It's going to take a lot of work. Okay, and it's going to take a lot of effort. No one denies that. Okay, so you really do need to focus on keeping your own passion burning, because your passion is contagious, and it helps your kids grow. It helps your kids learn, and it helps your kids develop in ways that they didn't think were possible. It's a slow, sometimes a very slow process, and it's a difficult process. But if you can break kids away from that apathy and help them create a passionate mindset, okay, help them become a lifelong learner. Even if you can just help create one passionate lifelong learner, all of your efforts will have been worth it. Art Ed Radio is developed, produced, and supported by the Art of Education with audio and engineering by Michael Crocker. You can see more from the podcast on artedradio.com, where you can also sign up for the weekly Art Ed Radio email. And like I said just a little bit ago, if you are looking for more inspiration, more ways to reignite that passion for teaching that you want to pass on to your students, make sure you check out artednow.com. Thank you, as always, for listening, and we will see you next week.